Hello and welcome back to the Football Chat. Today we're going to be talking about positions in football, why they're important and how potentially they may need changing. Now, positions in football have been a fairly solid thing throughout the years. You've got your traditional systems, traditional shapes, and actually a lot of the positions have stayed the same. Of course, we've had things like wing backs come in and the roles within those positions have changed. However, there's never been real wholesale changes of the whole positional understanding of players in football. So we're going to talk today, is it outdated? Do we need to change it? And what could be changed? So firstly, Harry, do you think that positions still hold relevance in football today?
I mean, we've come a long way since the basic 4-4-2 with two midfielders, two wingers, two strikers, two centre-halves and two full-backs and a goalkeeper. But it does feel like we are kind of getting away from that kind of centre-half or striker or left midfielder kind of role. And I think it is interesting because we're kind of getting into this bit where we don't have positions, which is really bizarre. I mean, apart from the goalkeeper, we can always guarantee the goalkeeper will be a nailed-on position in football. Because if that changes, then I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think, though, that the way that we talk about players is actually in many ways incorrect. And I think the labels we place on players are also incorrect. Because I don't think you can look at a specific position and say that they are the same player. I wouldn't say that, for example, João Cancelo is the same as Aaron Wan-Bissaka. They're very different moulds of players. And I think we need to be a bit more specific. Positions, I get why positions are simplistic. It makes it easier for casual fans to understand and for younger players, of course, if they've got an understanding. But it's the same with formations at the moment. Formations aren't what they do on the pitch. The teams that you see on mobile apps, on video games, on anything like that, where they've got the 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, it's very rare that shape stays the same throughout the game. It's very fluid. Players move, systems change. And actually, it's very difficult to write down who's playing where in modern football. So, in that regard, I think for me, formations are more important than having positions because formations do just give you some understanding of who's playing where, roughly.
Yeah, and
but they're still not very correct.
Yeah, I mean, even video games are now adapting so you can change formations mid-game and you can try out different systems. But I think it is more about how that system. I think it's more where you are in the system rather than where you are on the pitch. Yeah.
I think traditional positions don't accurately reflect what a player does anymore because there is such a difference in positions between individual players that a central midfielder doesn't encompass what everybody does. So in terms of potential alternatives then, how else could we label footballers? I've got a couple of suggestions. We could look at traditional player roles. We could describe a player as an inverted wing back, as an inside forward, as an inverted winger. However, I do just think that's a little bit too technical. I think you're going to lose a lot of people by doing that. But, if you start to refer to players as a Mazzala or as a box-to-box, while that is describing somewhat what they do, it's very technical and not very easy for people to understand. However, The Athletic, we've spoken about them a lot, they're very, very useful. They came up with this player role wheel. I found it very, very interesting. So basically, it's split up every different role in football into 18 understandable roles. So it starts initial wheel. I don't know if can we put something on screen so people can see it?
Possibly, yeah.
Sensational. There you go. You can see it now. If you look at the wheel, in the middle it's split it into defence and attack roles and then into the different positions in a sense. So wide defender, central attacker, wide attacker, advanced midfielder, and then deep midfielder. And then it splits it off into a much more succinct what roles, I guess you could call them. So rather than having a right back who is just a right back, you'd have, so in terms of wide defence, you've got safety, progressor and overlapper. So that gives you a bit more of a understanding of their role in the team. For central defender, you've got aggressor, spreader, anchor. For central attacker, you have finisher, target, roamer, which I think not the club, as in you roam around. For wide attacker, wide threat, unlocker, outlet. For advanced midfielder, box crusher, creator and orchestrator. And for deep midfielder, you've got box-to-box, distributor and builder. I think those fit a lot better. We can go more specifically into stuff. If you look at, so for example, progressors are people like Cancelo, the people that pick up the ball, whereas someone like Wan-Bissaka would be considered a safety. I think it does give a much more broad understanding of a player's role. What do you think, Harry?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, reverting to roles, rather than actual your kind of standard position. And I think you get a lot. Again, to bring up the whole video game idea, Football Manager is very centered around the role of the player rather than the position of the player. And I think it's an interesting one. But what I like, I mean, that colour, that I want to say colour wheel. It's not colour wheel.
Yeah, I've coloured it though to make
Yeah,
it
it's quite that is
look
quite
good.
good. But that position wheel kind of it broadens it broadens the naming for positions,
Yeah.
but also
To better
makes it
describe really what a player does.
yeah, but it does that by making it more specific, which is a bit
Yeah.
strange because you wouldn't expect something to be more broad but more specific.
Yeah, but I think that is what is needed. It accommodates for more different
Yeah.
roles within the same positions, and I think that actually our current positions are sort of out of date. But it's
Yeah.
difficult. It's difficult to say either way. I would say, because I think positions still serve a purpose, and I think especially with younger years and helping them understand football, they're very useful, and also for roughly understanding where people play on the pitch. But I do think player roles, especially when talking a bit more technically, I think they could be a lot easier to understand what a player
Yeah.
does if we talk about an overlapper rather than a right back. I think that you can more easily bracket and group players together in
Yeah.
that regard, and I think especially with building a team, if you're a manager or a coach and you're building a team, I think it's very useful to be able to have to see this sort of data. And this was, I forgot to mention, by the way, this was created by data, so it's not just a random stab in the dark. In fact, it's a more, so they've claimed it's a more detailed and data-based approach to defining player roles that they've developed. And I think that does make sense. So they use data analytics and dimension reduction techniques to group players into different roles. The resulting player roles are based on actual player performance data from various seasons and leagues. So they're taking that data and turning it into more tangible roles, which is something that I think will help people understand football more.
I mean, yeah, I think the main are because
the intricacies of
obviously, you wouldn't expect Sky Sports to be having, kind of changing their formation graphics or whatever, but I think the main argument on CB are the young audience of football and the young football players don't understand it. But for me, I think how much simpler would it be if you got a training and they can specialise. Go right, that's Jim the Progressor. That's James the Overlapper. That's Bob the Builder.
They sound like medieval
Yeah.
kings. But yeah, I think that, especially you mentioned with Sky, I think changing formations is very difficult because to actually show what a team does, you would have to show 3 different formations.
Yeah.
You would have to show out of possession, in transition, and in possession to actually show what a team does. So I do think that by having it in the defensive shape, you do get a good understanding anyway. But then I think if you have it as... Because to say it's overcomplicated, I think, is a bit harsh because you can already learn 11 positions. 18 is not any more difficult, I wouldn't say. So I think you can have... What we should have is that every player is labelled with that sort of thing. But I guess it's more difficult to apply over every league. But especially in the top 5 leagues, I think it would provide a lot more insight if they're grouped
I mean, the formation thing is interesting because in most lineups are always posted as a list of 11. You never, on a team's socials, you never see them put their formation out with a point in that. But they do put it as 11, and you have to make it up. And I mean, that'd be fine if they couldn't put down formation, just put down the 11 name. And I think this whole positions conversation also can broaden into the whole numbers aspect of football. You haven't got your 1 to 11, and your 4 and 5 centre halves, and your 2 and 3. Your right back's got 83. And, that's not traditional, but I think it does show we are progressing very rapidly. But I think it's managers in dressing rooms are, transitioning rapidly. But maybe the graphics and the visualizations and the namesakes for all these things,
how we talk about football, how we converse about football and shaping football. I know it's not the most interesting topic, shaping football. I know a lot of football fans would rather have more trivial discussions, but I think especially in more nuanced conversations, actually detailing what a player does, what their role is within that position, is a lot more interesting. And our final question of why does this matter? Why does it matter? Or does it? What do you think?
I think it's an interesting one. It really depends how you look at football. If you're a casual watcher of the game, you just go, there you go, they're playing a 4-3-1-2.
Yeah.
They've got this Don and this on up front. I know they're the strikers. I know it's the centre half. And I completely see that point of view as well. I kind of agree. I'm not very much for a technical watcher of football. I'm more of just a casual watcher of football that does a bit of analysis on the side. But I think definitely if you're into the, from an analytical, that's the word, analytical point of view looking at football, I think it would be fascinating if we were to start referring to players in these kind of more roles than positions.
I think especially within writing, written discourse about football, I think we'll see a lot of writers will move towards this sort of system. I don't know whether they will use the exact roles the Athletic have in this article by John Muller, by the way. I think I forgot to mention that, but it is his work. I don't know whether they would use those specific roles, but I think that there will be some specific roles used in written discourse, especially. Yeah. I think that in natural conversation it may feel a bit weird, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I think to your mate, you know, go, well, what do you think that Wan-Bissaka a progressor?
Well, he's a safety,
he's a safety.
He's a safety, and via the definition.
But I haven't even looked them up.
I think I think especially with coaching, as a coach, if the players knew those roles, it'd be a lot easier to be able to say, I want you to play as the overlapper today, or I want you to play as the progressor today. If I'm talking to my right back, or if it's a central midfield, I want you to be the box to box. They know what I mean by that, because I think especially with younger years, when you say box to box, they think we literally run box.
Yeah.
Which, in a sense, is what it does, but
especially on those tiny pitches, it is quite small. But I think the other thing is, so when you look at a player, take maybe Phone for example, because what would you call him? Because he could play on the left.
Let me just check if he's on the wheel.
He could play.
So Foden is an advanced midfielder box crasher, which I think does describe what he does fairly well. Crasher. Yeah, he arrives late into the box and creates enough chances. Yeah.
Okay.
He's been grouped in with Verts and Gnabry.
Yeah,
I think it's a fairly similar profile.
I think it's quite interesting because I'd look at it because he's one of those players. He can play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play through the middle. So what do you call that?
I think you have those different roles in those different positions, don't you? I think if he was to play out wide, would he be a bit more of an unlocker rather than an outlet, or maybe an outlet actually? If you think about it, but yeah, quite a creative player, so potentially an unlocker like Mount, Neymar, Pellegrini, or listed as that type player, or an outlet like Sancho, Grealish, Felix. But yeah, I think it's very interesting to look at. As I say, all on the Athletics. If you want to go and check it out for yourselves and read a little bit more into it, then please do. It's a very interesting topic. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see whether we do see a bit more of a technical approach to player position labelling in football broadcasting in the future. But yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for it to catch on mainstream. Yeah. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, I think that's everything for today's video. Anything else you want to touch on before we go?
Not I can think of.
Brilliant. Well, if you've got any questions, guys, get involved in the comments down below. Give your thoughts. Do you think we should be labelling positions based on what the role does rather than just where they stand on the pitch? Or do you think the actual current naming system is more than adequate and we're being a bit too technical, a bit too analytical, and a bit too nuanced? I don't know. Give your thoughts in the comments below. That is everything for today's video, though, guys. This is going out on Wednesday. So tonight we are live for a Champions League match. It will either be Manchester United, Copenhagen, or Arsenal versus Sevilla. Then on Thursday, we're live for Brighton versus Ajax, so join us there. Then this weekend, we've got another stream. I think it's on Saturday. Can't remember who. Maybe Sunday. Who knows?
Sunday.
It'll be whatever the big game is this week. That's
Sunday.
it. Yes. Can't wait.
I'm scared.
Yeah. That's everything for today, guys. Thank you very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.